Welcome back, everybody, to the Movie NP, the vlog where I review movies and provide the success tips that we can learn from those films. Tonight's film is going to be One Battle After Another. It is rated R. It's 2 hours and 41 minutes long. It has an IMDb rating of 7.9 out of 10 and a Rotten Tomatoes rating of 95%. It falls into the genres of dark comedy, political thriller, action, and crime. It's currently available to watch on HBO Max and Fandango at home. It's directed by Paul Thomas Anderson, and it's written by Paul Thomas Anderson and Thomas Pynchon. It stars Leonardo DiCaprio as Ghetto Pat / Bob, Tiana Taylor as Perfidia Beverly Hills, Sean Penn as Stephen J. Lockjaw, and Chase Infinity as Charlene / Willa. The basic plot here is that 16 years after Ghetto Pat and his daughter Charlene have gone into hiding, they've been tracked down by Lockjaw, who kidnaps Charlene. It then becomes a race against the clock to rescue Charlene. It then becomes a thrilling race against the clock to save his daughter. So basically, this is the plot of Taken, but with a washed-up, stoned ex-revolutionary who's trying to find his daughter. Here's my reaction and thoughts on the film. I agree with the IMDb rating of 7.9 out of 10, but I do not agree with the Rotten Tomatoes rating of 95%. Rotten Tomatoes also has a popcorn rating, which is a rating by the fans, and that's at 85%. So I would lean a little closer to that. So there's several reasons why I would give this a lower rating than 95%. First and foremost, it's way too long. Again, I feel like I could have done what this movie did in 90 minutes versus 2 hours and 41 minutes. Also, within the first few minutes of the film, within the first probably 15 minutes of the film, I knew where the plot was going, and that was a little disappointing. And here's why, and I think here's what I would have done. The reason why I think it was so easy to figure out the plot is they spend a ton of time setting up the history of what happened 16 years ago. What I would have done is I would have started with present day, and I would have done the history in flashbacks so that it was a little bit more surprising of what the big plot twist was in the film. And I know you don't understand what I'm saying right now, but when you check out the film, or as you listen to my scene-by-scene review, you'll get an idea of what I'm talking about. So the big focus of the film is it is a social and political commentary about abuse, corruption of power, racial tensions, immigration, rebellion versus the existing power structure, individual rights / freedoms versus policy, how absolute power or power unchecked corrupts absolutely, and the cyclic conflicts that will never be won. To sum this all up in one sentence, One Battle After Another is about the emotional cost of control and the freedom that comes when you stop participating in fights that were never meant to be won. Spoiler alert. Here's a scene-by-scene breakdown and the big reveal of the plot twist and the end of the film. The film starts with Perfidia Beverly Hills casing an immigration detention center. We are then introduced to the rebel resistance group, the French 75, during a meeting where they discuss how they're going to raid the detention center and liberate the detainees. We quickly learn that Perfidia Beverly Hills is the group leader. We are then introduced to Ghetto Pat, who seems to be an explosion expert, but he's not thrilled with the plan because he's not clear of what's supposed to go down. So he asks Perfidia what is supposed to happen, and she just tells him, create a show. As we are driving to the detention center, we learn that Perfidia and Pat are a couple. The group raids the detention center, and in doing so, Perfidia has a run-in with one of the officers stationed at the detention center, Stephen J. Lockjaw. But rather than just tying him up and holding him at gunpoint, she decides to tease him both psychologically and sexually. However, rather than being humiliated by all this, we discover that Lockjaw is actually turned on by this, and he becomes obsessed over Perfidia. The French 75 successfully raid the detention center, and then we are treated to a montage of all the raids and the chaos that Perfidia and the French 75 create. Meanwhile, we are shown that Lockjaw is watching from a distance and seems to be stalking Perfidia. In fact, Lockjaw corners her during one of the raids, and he tells her basically, I don't care what you blow up, but if you want to continue, you have to come meet me at a motel tonight. So Perfidia shows up at the motel, and we are quickly treated to scenes of her dominating and topping Lockjaw. And although we are not explicitly shown these scenes, it is heavily suggested that they have had sex. Perfidia then returns home to Ghetto Pat like nothing ever happened. And the next scene, we see a very pregnant Perfidia. Dun dun dun! Here, let me show you my shock face. And this is one of the reasons why I'm disappointed in the film, is because within the first few minutes, clearly we are easily able to determine the plot twist here. So Perfidia then gives birth, and we see her and Ghetto Pat raising the child. They name her Charlene. However, quickly Perfidia becomes jealous of her own baby. We know this because there's a scene where she's on the phone talking to somebody that's off screen, stating, "It's like she is his only girl while I'm just a piece of meat." She also states that she does not feel loved. Quickly after this, we see Perfidia grabbing her things and leaving the house. Ghetto Pat asks her, "Where are you going?" and tries to reason with her and get her to stay for the baby and the family. But this simply throws gasoline on the fire and enrages her further, and she states, "This is a new consciousness. I'm not your utter buddy. I'm not your mother. You want your power over me for the same reasons you want your power over the world. You and your crumbling male ego will never do the revolution like me. Get the fuck out of here," quote unquote. And she stomps out, and Ghetto Pat responds as she's walking out the door, "Go do the revolution, baby. Go do the revolution." Soon after this, we see the French 75 decide to rob a bank. However, the bank robbery goes horribly wrong. What occurs is one of the bank guards will not follow Perfidia's commands, so she goes ahead and shoots him. The group then panics and flees, and this turns into a wild police chase where ultimately Perfidia ends up on foot and is cornered and arrested by the police. Witness protection and provided a beautiful new home. Lockjaw then assumes the role of her significant other, and initially it seems that they're going to live the white picket fence American dream. But Perfidia quickly realizes that she's made a mistake, and all she's done is exchanged prison for a gilded cage. Meanwhile, we see a montage of the police murdering the people that Perfidia has ratted on. Next, we see Lockjaw return home with a beautiful bouquet of flowers, only to find that Perfidia has run away and left him a Dear John letter that simply says, "This pussy don't pop for you." We next see Perfidia cross over to the Mexican border and fade to black. We no longer see Perfidia for the rest of the film. The camera starts to roll again, and we see that 16 years have gone by. We see that Bob and Willa, aka Ghetto Bob and Charlene, have assumed a new life and Backton Cross. Willa has no memory of past events and seems to be growing up as a typical American high schooler. We also learn that she has been told that her mother died while she was very young, which is obviously a lie. We also see a short montage of Lockjaw progressing in rank and advancing in his career while being awarded for a successful career and service. At this point, we see Lockjaw is invited to a secret meeting where he is invited to become a member of an elitist, white supremacist, Illuminati-like group called the Christmas Adventurers Club. It is made clear that if he's accepted to the club, that essentially he will have unlimited power and riches available to him. However, there's a catch. He is told that if he wishes to apply, there will be a thorough background check to assure that he is pure in breed and in lifestyle. He is then asked if this will be a problem, and quickly he responds, absolutely not. He states that he is squeaky clean and there's absolutely no reason that he would be disqualified from being a member of the Christmas Adventurers Club. So almost over an hour into the film, we finally learn the overarching conflict, and that Lockjaw realizes that his relationship with Perfidia most likely produced a mixed race child. He realizes that there's a 50-50 chance that Willa is his child, and if the Christmas Adventure Club folks find out, he will be disqualified. So, what would any of us do? That's right, he decides to try to go and eliminate the evidence, aka knock off Willa. So at this point, Lockjaw becomes obsessed with tracking down and eliminating Willa. He goes so far as to tell his troops that they are to use any legal or illegal means necessary to find her. Lockjaw's police force quickly track down and kidnap one of the resistance members named Billy Goat. They asked him, where has Ghetto Pat and Charlene gone, aka Bob and Willa. He of course responds that he does not know who they're talking about, he's not going to give up any information, and he's certainly not afraid of them. The police force's response to him is, we understand you're not afraid. However, what about your sister? Realizing that his sister's life is in danger, he quickly gives up the location and the assumed names of Ghetto Pat and Charlene, telling them that they are using the names Bob and Willa. Meanwhile, other resistance members have realized that Billy Goat has been kidnapped, and they sound the alert to the rest of the resistance members. Lockjaw is then informed that the town that they most likely have fled to is called Bacton Cross. Knowing this, Lockjaw orders an illegal raid of the town under a false flag operation. He uses the excuse of illegal drug dealings and the harboring of illegal aliens to raid the town. In addition, he orders a special team to bag and tag Bob and apprehend Willa. We next see the troops moving out while the scene cuts to Willa's friends arriving to take her to the high school dance. Willa and her friends arrive at the dance, but soon after Willa has to use the bathroom. While Willa is in the bathroom, we see the police troops closing in. However, Willa's transponder begins to play a melody. We discover this is because a resistance member named Champagne has found her before the police troops have. In essence, she tells Willa in Terminator style, if you want to live, come with me. So she escapes with Champagne to a van that's going to drive her to a safe house. Moments later, the police troops show up and raid the school. However, no Willa can be found. So quickly they identify her friends and begin to interrogate them. Meanwhile, Bob receives a call telling him that Willa is in danger, but she is currently safe. He is then told that he needs to meet her at the rendezvous point. So Bob asks where the rendezvous point is, and he's told that he has to answer a code phrase to find the location. Unfortunately for Bob, he does not know the response to the code phrase, and he admits that years of drug use have left him completely stoned, and the time that has transpired, he cannot remember a thing. But regardless of how much Bob begs and pleads, the caller on the other line will not give him the location without the proper code word. At this point, Bob realizes that his house is being raided by the police, and he narrowly escapes through a secret tunnel. Bob heads to the only place where he might find some help. He goes to Willa's sensei, Sensei Sergey. Bob shows up all freaked out and in a state of panic, but Sergey remains cool, calm, and collected. Bob tells Sergey that he needs help and he needs to find a place to charge his phone. Meanwhile, Sergey is on his phone with someone on the other end telling him that the Chicken Licken Frozen Farms plant has been raided. He responds by telling the individual to get everybody together and head to the store called Genesis. Following this, he tells Bob, "We gotta go." En route to the Genesis, Bob confesses to Sergey and tells him who he really is. When they get to the Genesis store, Sergey calmly tells them to close the store. We then follow Bob and Sergey as they head through the store and up to the living quarters above. In doing so, we discover that Sergey is the leader of his own resistance group and that he is harboring illegal aliens and families. Bob finally is able to get enough power in his phone to make a phone call back to the French 75 headquarters. After another argument because he has forgotten the password, he eventually asks to speak to a supervisor. Luckily for Bob, the supervisor ends up being one of his old friends and resistance members called Tallyman. Tallyman asks him a question that he is easily able to answer, and once verifying his identity, Tallyman gives him the location of the rendezvous point, which is the Sisters of the Brave Beaver. By this point, the police have pulled down the gate that protects the entrance to the store. They begin to raid Genesis while Sergey tells everyone to evacuate. Sergey then gives Bob a rifle and tells his associates to help him escape. They lead Bob to the rooftops to avoid the police and begin to leap from building to building. Unfortunately for Bob, he can't keep up and accidentally falls off the roof and is quickly arrested by the police. Sergey is informed of this. Next, while Bob is being booked, he is presented to the booking nurse for medical clearance. She leads him through some questioning by nodding her head yes and no, and ultimately tells the arresting officer that he has not taken his insulin and he has to be taken to the hospital. But when he arrives at the hospital, he is told by a nurse how to escape. He's told to pass through the bathroom, go down the hall, and down the fire escape. He follows the nurse's direction, passes through the bathroom, down the hall, and down the fire escape. At the bottom, he finds Sergey waiting to pick him up in his car. Next, the scene cuts to Willow arriving at the convent, where she is introduced by Champagne and quickly shown to her room. We then cut to a member of the Christmas Adventures Club being called to a secret meeting. Tim is informed that during Lockjaw's background check, it is alleged that he had a relationship with a black girl and may have a mixed-race child. They realize that Lockjaw has most likely used the raid on Backton Cross to eliminate the evidence. Furthermore, what Lockjaw didn't know is that the owner of the Chicken Lickin' Frozen Farms is a member of the Christmas Adventures Club. And this member did not take kindly that his facility was raided, his illegal workers arrested, which halted production for him and is costing him money. Only at the end of the meeting, none of the members are pleased that they feel that they have been deceived by Lockjaw, and Tim is asked to go, quote-unquote, make it clean. Meanwhile, back in Backton Crossing, Lockjaw finds a witness that tells him that he saw a van heading north with a black female passenger. This witness continues that the only thing up north is a convent of black nuns that grow marijuana. At this point, it becomes a race to see who can get to Willa first. Unfortunately for Willa, Lockjaw is the one who makes it there first. He grabs Willa, ties her hands behind her back, and swabs her mouth so he can run a DNA test. He tells her if the lines of the test do not line up, she's free to go. But if they do, she's going to have a problem. And guess what? I'm sure you're all going to be shocked by this, but the lines line up. Lockjaw then drags Willa to his SUV, but Bob has shown up moments before and tries to shoot him with a rifle. Unfortunately, Bob misses, and Lockjaw drives off before Bob can get another shot in. Bob then jumps back into the car and takes up pursuit, but not knowing where he's going, he's hoping that the transceiver will lead the way. Meanwhile, Lockjaw drives Willa out to the middle of nowhere and meets up with Avante the bounty hunter. He hands Willa off to Avante and asks Avante to kill her. Avante responds that he doesn't do kids. Lockjaw then offers him double if he'll kill her, but he still refuses. Lockjaw then asks Avante if he'll at least drive her down to the bar named 1776 so his associates can take care of her. Avante agrees to do so and drives off with Willa. Lockjaw then drives off in the opposite direction. But not long after, Tim shows up in a souped-up Ford Mustang and pulls up along Lockjaw. As Lockjaw turns to see who's pulled up beside him, Tim pulls up a shotgun and shoots Lockjaw in the face. Lockjaw's SUV veers off the road, flips over, and lands upside down in the desert below. Tim drives off satisfied that no one would be able to survive a direct shot through the face and the violent crash following. As Tim drives away, he's passed by Bob. Bob's transceiver then begins to play a melody, leading him to believe that Willa is near. But as Bob clears the crest of the hill, he sees the crash of Lockjaw's SUV below. He quickly pulls over and rushes to the crash, thinking that Willa is in the vehicle. But thankfully, Willa is not there. She simply left her transceiver behind. So Bob quickly jumps back in his car and continues his search. Meanwhile, we cut back to Avante and Willa. Avante arrives at the 1776 bar and hands Willa over to Lockjaw's associates. Willa is handcuffed to a bench outside the front of the bar, and Avante returns to his car. We then cut back to Bob frantically driving around, aimlessly searching for Willa. We then cut back to the 1776 bar, where Avante has seemingly grown unconscious and decides he's going to save Willa. Avante walks over and uncuffs her, and before the associates can ask what he's doing, Willa runs off. Quickly, a gunfight breaks out between Avante and Lockjaw's associates. Willa runs over and jumps into Avante's car and tries to escape, but realizes she doesn't have the keys. Willa has to risk going back to the bar to get the keys. When she returns to the bar, she finds everyone laying around, either dead or unconscious. Thankfully for her, she doesn't wait around to find out who's dead and who's just unconscious. She finds the keys in Avante's pocket, runs back to the car, jumps in, and speeds away. From this moment on, they shift back from car to car and driver to driver, and you're not really sure where anyone is exactly. But what you do see is them speeding over a series of camel humpbacks along the roadway. Soon after, we discover that Willa is being followed by Tim and his Mustang. We're not exactly sure if this is intentional or not, but Willa decides she's not going to find out. So as she crests the next humpback, she quickly parks the car in the middle of the road, jumps out, grabs the gun she found along the way, and hides behind a road sign. Tim, however, continues to speed along the roadway, crests the camelback at high speed, and before he can hit the brakes, he plows into the back of Willa's car. Somehow Tim survives the crash, and he gets out bleeding and stunned. But Willa doesn't give him a chance to explain why he was following her, and she simply shoots him in the head. Moments later, Bob pulls up. He jumps out of the car and rushes over to Willa, but out of shock, she pulls a gun on him. Bob pleads with her, saying, "Willa, I'm your dad." But Willa's not satisfied until he answers some code words. Thankfully, he responds properly and she is satisfied. She drops her gun and Bob rushes over to hug her, and they're reunited. Following this, they jump back into Bob's car and they drive off into the sunset. So is this the end of the film? Everyone's happy. Bob and Willa have driven off into the sunset. It's the end, right? Nope. Because moments later, we are treated as a scene of Lockjaw walking down the road with his face all bloody. We then fast forward with his final interview with the Christmas Adventurers Club. We see that the left side of Lockjaw's face is completely disfigured. They begin to ask Lockjaw some final questions, and he takes the opportunity to openly admit that he has an interracial child. However, he continues that he has not had a relationship with a black woman. This confuses the members of the Christmas Adventurers Club, and they ask him, how can this be? He responds with the ridiculous story that he was reverse raped. And she did so because she recognized what a superior specimen he was and that she wanted his sperm. The committee members then excuse him so they can make their final vote. Moments later, Lockjaw is met by one of the members that tell him that they have made the final decision and that they have accepted him into the Christmas Adventurers Club. Of course, Lockjaw is ecstatic with hearing this information. And the member tells him that he's going to show him around the office. He is led to office number 55, But unfortunately, the member tells him that he has forgotten the keys for Lockjaw's office, and he'll be right back. He tells Lockjaw to make himself company as he closes the door to the room and heads off down the hall. But as Lockjaw sits there and puts his feet up, we zoom into the air vent where we hear a suspicious hissing sound. Soon after, we see Lockjaw growing tired and passes out. Moments later, a group of men show up in hazmat suits, drag Lockjaw out of his office, and toss him into an incinerator. The film ends with scenes of Bob and Willa seemingly settled back into normal life. Bob gives Willa a letter that he says he should have given to her a long time ago. Willa excuses herself to her bedroom so she can read the letter in private. We find that the letter is from her mother, Perfidia. Perfidia apologizes for becoming lost and disconnecting from her family. She questions if it's too late after all of her lies to make amends. Perfidia ends the letter by stating that one day she hopes that Willa will seek her out and find her. The film ends as a QST alert comes over the shortwave radio announcing that there's a protest in Oakland. Willa grabs her gear and begins to head towards the door. Bob protests and tells her that it's 3 hours away and it's raining. She responds by grabbing her raincoat. Bob tells her to be careful as she walks out the door and drives off to join the protest. And in true Lion King fashion, the circle of life is complete. Cue Elton John and roll the credits. The end. Well, that's it for tonight, folks. I hope you enjoyed that. Please click like and subscribe. Please share this with a friend if you know anybody that's interested in personal development and success tips. And also, well, that's it for tonight, folks. I hope you liked. Well, that's it for tonight, folks. I hope you enjoyed this, and I do hope you gained something from it. Please press subscribe. Please share this with a friend. And please comment below of how you like the film. And please be sure to check out my next video. Have a good night. Bye-bye.